Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by 4for4 Bets. I'm Ryan Noonan, joined here, as always, by my friend Connor Allen. We're going to talk a little bit of reaction here to the NFL schedule, see how it turns out in terms of wins, over-unders, divisional wins, rest advantages, absolutely brutal opening stretches, finishing stretches, all that and more here. I know Connor is in the lab doing lots of work right now, trying to figure out how often Team X is favored, how often Team Y is not favored at all in any games. What's going on, Connor?
Yeah, not much. It's everyone was freaking out over the schedule release. Last night I went to Joey Molinaro, the comedian show, so I kind of a little smell the roses action there. But came back, got in the lab this morning, been grinding it out. I'll probably have a couple threads, today, tomorrow. I've been compiling some of the player prop data as well from last season. Some of those were popular, about unders hitting a bunch. But yeah, these look ahead lines are really interesting. I like going through, seeing how often the team is favored, how often they're not, like some certain scheduling quirks, because it's not like that indicative of what's going to happen. But I mean, if a team is not favored in a single game and you're sitting there week 6, why did I bet the over on this team? A 4.5? 4.5 seems like nothing, but they're literally not going to win a single game because they're terrible. So that's those. Every year we have a team on the show that we are like, this team sucks, and their over-under is like 5.5 or 6.5, and we bet under, and it still hits like by at least a game or two. So hoping to find that team this year, and I think we might have it.
Yeah, there's some out there for sure. I think there's some interesting little schedule nuggets in terms of rest and where that happens and travel and all those things. One of the frustrating things again, and shout out to Warren Sharp at Sharp Football. Is lots of good schedule based content, and I had a tweet that is absolutely infuriating around can we just split the games up a little bit better? Why do we have to jam in like week 2? We get 10 in the early window. 10 is a shit ton of games. Like 10
can't even fit the Octobox.
Can't fit the Octobox. Yeah, I mean, I got double TVs, and you do the quad box. I can't get all the games. It's so stupid. It's insane. And then 3 in the late window. When one of them is going to be garbage, so then you get these just two games. It's terrible. Give us 7 and 4, 6 and 4. Some other unique quirks too, Connor, probably more relevant to our friends that are in the fantasy streets. It's obviously something that we dabble in as well. A massive part of all the things that we do here at 4for4. Week 14 bye. 6 teams with a week 14 bye. Last year there were 2 teams. Typically, week 14 bye, that's your first round of fantasy football playoffs. So that's kind of a tough stretch. And then you look at these teams, like there's some impactful teams: Ravens, Texans, Colts, Commanders, Patriots, Broncos. All 6 of those teams not playing in week 14, which is interesting too. It's also just weird. Like you're going to go that long without having a bye week. That's really tough. And you have some teams having like a week 6 bye. It's just kind of crazy. So yeah, I don't know how you want to kind of fold this into talking about it today. Obviously, we touched on some of this last week a little bit with some easy schedules and some harder schedules. Falcons have an incredibly easy schedule. They are mowing the lawn right outside my window. I'm not sure if you hear that, but
no, you're okay.
Good. Falcons have an insanely easy schedule. We touched on it last week too. Some of their first 3 or their unique 3 games are incredibly easy as well, and that's something that I think is kind of an advantage. And you see divisionally, you're going to play all the same teams as your divisional foes. Now, where it is in terms of in the schedule, home or road, in some of these instances, it does matter a little bit. But Falcons playing Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Minnesota. Comparatively, Pittsburgh, I think, solid team. I think we'd all kind of agree. Maybe the 4th team in that AFC North division. Seattle's a team that's kind of up in the air in terms of what the expectations are for them this year. And Minnesota, again, decent squad, similar to Pittsburgh, but probably the 4th team in that division as well. That's the unique 3 for the Falcons, and their schedule is massively front-loaded. Touch on the Falcons or anything else that you like in terms of schedules that jump out to you as easy.
Yeah, the Falcons, the way their schedule is set up, so they have the Steelers and then at home, which I think is pretty winnable, but it's like one of their tougher games. And then they go on the road against the Eagles and then at home against the Chiefs. So maybe they start 1-2, maybe they start 0-3. That is the time to buy on the Falcons. From there on out, they play 1 game projected to have a winning record the rest of the season, which is the Dallas Cowboys, which, at like 10.5 wins. The Chargers are at like, 8.5 win total. So it's like, that's the fringe one. Everyone else, 8 wins or fewer, they're projected to have, including the Panthers twice, the Broncos, the Raiders, the Commanders, the Giants, the Vikings. Like, I mean, they're just going to go nuts down the stretch. And so I wouldn't panic, sell any, Falcons stuff early. And maybe it could be a good time for Falcons future after week 3. Might set a reminder in my phone, just like, buy the dip on the Falcons here.
Right.
Not overreact to anything we see in the first few weeks, because like, I mean, they're going to win 9, 10, 11 games, but it just might all come after week 3.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting start. It'll be interesting to see too, obviously, with all the dynamics going on in the quarterback room there too. If they get out to a slow start, not that people are going to be calling for Michael Penix. It's just going to be a thing, right? You're going to be like, oh, this could have been so much easier if they would have added, a contributing player in the first round and not a, possible, future quarterback and a backup quarterback. It definitely just keeps that narrative fresh and flowing there as well. Some of the teams with some of the easier schedules, that same division stays with some of the easier schedules, which is interesting too. Again, part of that is you get to play the other teams in your division, right? Saints, again, fairly easy schedule, although I think you make the case that their unique 3 is significantly easier. You touched on the Chargers as a team that you were interested in on last week's show. Just, obviously massive upgrade and coaching change and the things that can happen there. Their unique 3, Tennessee, at New England, at Arizona. So definitely softer comparatively. If you get the AFC East and you have New England as your draw there, that is a massive bonus. I think you could say the same for Tennessee in the AFC South. Though, again, Titans are okay, not a terrible team. And same thing with Arizona. You're avoiding, San Francisco and such. Chargers are a team, again, you're laying some juice at this point to take the over on the 8.5. I don't think you're going to make a case for them to win the division. But anything that came out on the Chargers with the second easiest schedule interest you?
Yeah, and I think it just kind of plays into more of what I was talking about last week, which is like the style of football that the Chargers want to play, I think will be strengthened by their schedule. And like we've seen it, basically every year we'll see a team that maybe they're not an awesome team on paper and maybe they're not, perfect, but they play a certain style of football and then they get an easy schedule. They can just run the ball, play, good air quotes defense and against teams that are not that good. But again, their defense looks better because they're playing bad teams and they're able to win a lot of games. And it's like, even if they do fall behind, I think they have the capability with Justin Herbert. And even with, fewer weapons, I think that they'll still be able to find a way to do that. But again, if you're able to run the ball and then just have him be more of a game manager, like they're just going to be really efficient and boring and win a lot of games. So, I think that's pretty interesting. And then I think we have to touch on the Bears too, who have the number 1 easiest schedule the first 10 weeks of the season. And that includes games against the Titans, the Panthers, the Commanders, the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Vikings in week 12. And like their tough games obviously are the AFC South, but like, in my mind, those are kind of like coin flip games. The Texans, the Colts, and the Jags. Like, I think they'll probably win 1 or 2 of those games. I highly doubt they win all 3, but they're definitely going to win 1 or 2 of them. I think the Colts are no slouch. Like I've seen a lot of Bears analysts writing like, oh, Colts W, like they're going to win for sure against them. I think the Colts are pretty good. So I think that game is going to be pretty close. And I think you're a Colts guy as well. But if you look at even their hardest games, like it's mostly in division stuff. It's like the Packers, the Lions, and then they play the Niners, who are obviously the best team they play. And I think the Packers and Lions are good, but they're going to win 1 or 2 of those games. Like I would bet that they probably split or at least win 1 of those. And so, like really their tough games like are really very winnable in my mind. So I think that it's a pretty interesting schedule draw for them and Caleb. And I just don't think that people are ready to and can fully comprehend like how different the Bears are going to look this year versus previous seasons.
Yeah. Do you think that's the biggest point, right? Is the fact that whatever you need to do to operate and learn to equip yourself to play NFL football, to get everything calibrated in this new Bears system, right? 2 new receivers and all that's going on, hopefully continuity and along the offensive line, you kind of get to figure it out. Not that it's an easy opening schedule, but like the meat of it comes later. And the fact that you can kind of take on some of the lumps and navigate what that looks like early in the season with a softer schedule is massive. It's a massive advantage that you're getting to a point in the season where you're playing your best football. You got a little bit of, experience under your belts, and now bring on the toughest part of the schedule. And it's a tough end of the schedule, right? Just 2 of those final 6 games are at home, which is, kind of, you would think maybe a home field advantage. You'd want to have some of those Detroit in particular, you'd love to get them late in the season. They get them at home late in the season outside the dome, which is, week 16, cold hand golf game. We like that for sure on the Bears side. But yeah, definitely just a great way for this to break for the Bears, knowing that, again, just comparatively to the rest of their division rivals, a significantly softer schedule, whereas the Vikings have a pretty tough slate. Packers, Lions more towards the middle of the pack, but on the harder side in terms of schedule, whereas the Bears have a top 3 schedule in terms of opponents' win totals. So really nice, unique 3: Patriots, Panthers, at Commanders. So the unique thing too, like they play 3 to start against the AFC South, which is weird. Titans, Texans, Colts, all to start and backloaded in the division. Steelers, another team, absolutely the other end of it, backloaded in the division, but their end of the season gauntlet is absolutely brutal. So whatever that reminder is you want to put in for taking some action late on the Falcons, we got maybe do the opposite on the Steelers. I know some people are like interested in the Steelers and bullish on the Steelers, and I think the roster is improved. The quarterback room is obviously going to be an interesting discussion for them, but man, that end of the season schedule for Pittsburgh is absolutely brutal. Any thoughts on the Steelers or any really tough schedules you want to highlight?
Yeah, it's crazy too because their end of their season, so they have a week 9 bye. Their first game out of the bye is their easiest, but it's on the road against Washington. I mean, it's not like a shoe-in, win by any means, because especially if Washington shows life. Like, I just think they're a little bit volatile given Jayden Daniels. I think they could be terrible again if Jayden Daniels sucks, but if he shows any kind of life, it'll be a close game. And then from there, it's Baltimore twice, Browns twice, Bengals twice, Eagles, and Chiefs. Just disaster end of the season. They could be 4-4, 5-3 heading into their bye. They get the Broncos, the Colts, the Raiders, the Giants. Then they play some other kind of coin flippy games with the Chargers and the Falcons. And then their tough ones are like Jets and Cowboys, but they could easily be 4-4, 5-3 heading into the bye and just win one game, 1 or 2 games out after the bye. So I think that's just incredibly tough. And it's going to be another test of how good of a coach is Mike Tomlin. And he's consistently, I think, answered the question with a resounding yes, at least being an average to above average team. And I think they have a little more talent than what they haven't had in previous years. And it could create the way that they play and are going to play, it's going to create more volatility with game results because they're going to kind of shorten the game, try and play good defense, run the ball a ton with Arthur Smith, just play these ugly, nasty games that they're going to beat some teams they should and lose to some teams that they shouldn't. So I don't know. It's certainly going to be an interesting year for them.
It feels like whoever wins that quarterback battle in the summer here leading into the start of the season probably has a fairly good chance to hold on to it for a little bit too, right? We have Russell Wilson, apparently the leader in the clubhouse, probably gets the first shot. Having a softer start of the schedule probably gives him the ability to gain a little bit of a longer leash against some of the softer opponents, whereas if it was reversed, get off to a really slow start against the meat of your schedule, then all of a sudden you could have had maybe a Justin Fields come in and clean up against the back half, which is easier. And it did not play out that way. And it's similar to the Falcons when you look at easier schedules is where you're at in the back end of that Steelers schedule. It is significantly harder than everyone else. So it's not even it's 32nd, but it's miles away from everyone else. So really, really, really tough end of the slate season there for the Steelers. Couple other tidbits. There's some, interesting stuff on who starts early. The Dolphins have a really soft start and they're another team with a brutal back end of the schedule. The Jags have kind of a front end loaded schedule and they have, back-to-back games on the road in London. The Patriots are an interesting one, Connor. They get the second of those 2 Jags London games, which has to be, I think it happened last year, right? Didn't we have that where there's back-to-back London games? And that's just your mind. It makes so much sense that, having already adjusted and been there for a week, which should give you an advantage versus the team that's traveling there. But let's just talk Pats real quick. That schedule is find the win. It's where's Waldo? I don't know. Waldo is actually on the page though, which insinuates that there's actually a win to be found for the Patriots. I can't find it. I know that's sounds crazy. It's all right, they're not going to not win a game. They probably will win a football game. Are they going to win 5 or 6, Connor? And that's what we need in terms of backing the Patriots to go over their win total. I sure as hell can't find 6. I promise you that.
Yeah, so there's 2 teams so far that are underdogs in every single game in look ahead lines. So like, DraftKings posted lines for all 18 weeks so far. And I like to go through and, put them all in a little grid, and I'll tweet this out later, but the Patriots are not only underdogs in every single game, they are not underdogs by fewer than 3 points, which I consider to be kind of coin flip games.
Mhm.
There's only 4 of them all season. So we're talking about 4 coin flip games, and then just the rest are not coin flip games. Like they're outside looking in from the get-go, from the first snap. And so, yeah, I mean, we're looking at a 5.5 win total at FanDuel, -142 on the under, 4.5 in other spots. That might be a play. I don't know. I'm going to dive in more and kind of go game by game here, but it's really tough because they don't have great weapons for Drake May. Drake May is already, we knew, was kind of a project as is. He's not even probably going to start week 1. Jacoby Brissett's -250 to start week 1, which I guess that's fine. But like the Patriots almost need a little bit of hero ball right now. And like, if they're not getting a hero, then they're just going to be losing games, and it's going to be ugly and probably not great, to be honest.
I mean, really tough opening stretch too, for whatever you want to make of that. And if that's going to be Jacoby Brissett's throw him to the fire with the opening stretch at Cincinnati, home to Seattle, which, is maybe one of the winnable games on the schedule. I think Seattle's a better football team for sure. But again, you're trying to find where the wins are coming from. That maybe is one of your better chances. Then you're back out on the road at the Jets, at the Niners, before welcoming in Miami and Houston, and then taking that second in a row for Jacksonville in London. So just a really brutal stretch. Come back from London, play 3 or 4 on the road. It just is daunting stretch for the Pats. 4.5 under, +140 on Caesars. Feels pretty nice to get that plus money at +140. Laying 140 juice on a 5.5 in May is not necessarily the best way to utilize your bank account, but great bet if that's your thing. And maybe bank account budget and how you allocate funds is you're fine tying up some money there.
Baby.
Yeah, credit. You got a credit book. That is a 6 wins, man. They need multiple injuries in their opponents and to stay very healthy. So again, pretty good defense. We saw last year Christian Gonzalez played really well before he went down. Matthew Judon went down early in that season, and they still were a top 5, top 10 defense based in most statistical measurements down the stretch, which I think was impressive. I think there should be some continuity with Mayo staying on and being the head coach with that defense and all those things. But I don't know. I think Bill Belichick is a pretty good coach. Pretty good defensive mind, and I would like to think that he had something to do with the fact that the Patriots were pretty good defensively last year. He is, on the comedy circuit these days and out on his boat and doing some other stuff. So I don't think we're going to get any Belichick insight. So yeah, going to be a very interesting season in New England and kind of a tough one there too. Who else jumped out to you? What else do you want to kind of highlight here?
Another fun one, Carolina Panthers, the other team that are not favored in a single game. And I guess not that surprising, but their games are all close. So they only have one game where they're underdogs of more than 7 all season. Every other game, they're dogs between, less than 7. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of them are between 3 and 6, 3 and 6.5, but it's kind of interesting because they're one of those teams that I think, like, I don't want to say could take a leap, but I think could be better if Dave Canales brings in some of the stuff that they did from the Bucs. Like, we were definitely down on the Bucs as well, and he put lipstick on a pig. He made Baker look good. He, ended up getting a contract. The offensive line was terrible heading into the year, and we were like, and he made it look all right. I think the Panthers' offensive line has as much talent, if not more, than what Tampa Bay dealt with. The question, though, is like the weapons, because like Baker got bailed, was able to be bailed out by Chris Godwin, by Mike Evans. The Panthers have Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, and Deontay Johnson. I mean, Deontay looked cooked at times last year. Maybe he was dealing with an injury, but he didn't look that good. Thielen just like died like the second half of the season, just couldn't do anything. And then I think I've already voiced my concerns about Legette, was kind of like a change of pace, who can be like a change of pace gadget guy, but I don't really have too high of expectations for. One of the worst route runners in Matt Harmon's reception perception this year against man coverage, just 19th percentile. So Yeah, I don't really see it. I'm not sure that they should be underdogs in every game. I think I'm a little bit more bullish on them than like the Patriots, but it's not by much.
Yeah, again, all hinges on the quarterback, and if he takes a step forward, to your point, we don't love what they've gone ahead and done around him. Not that it's enough, but at a certain point, the 101 has got to be a talent elevator, so that's going to fall on him, I think, to see what happens with this with defense. And yeah, maybe there's something with Dave Canales, and maybe he is a talent maximizer and can get more. Definitely got more out of the Tampa Bay team and Baker Mayfield than we expected last year too. Jets, very interesting. Jets, very soft front of the schedule. Tough opening one, obviously, on the road in San Francisco. Then it opens up with, again, some soft opponents, the possibility of facing rookie quarterbacks weeks 3 through 5, which could be interesting depending on what's going on in New England, Denver, and Minnesota. But then it kind of maintains an easy schedule. Again, they have obviously some difficult opponents, but mixed in comparatively, this is what we touched on last week a little bit with their unique 3. Just significantly easier than the rest of their division. The Bills have one of the hardest schedules in the league. Dolphins is pretty easy. Just touched on the Pats, but the Jets is significantly easier than all of them. And it looks like the league would like the Jets to be a interesting story, at least as the season kind of gets off to a start. Again, Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, weeks 2 through 5, all very winnable games. Again, the Pats not too far back with another week 8 game there too. Any thoughts on the Jets?
Yeah, the Jets are only underdogs in 3 games this year. Their win total is 9.5. Only dogs in 3 games. Like you mentioned, they have a super soft start of the season outside of their week 1 game where they're 5.5 point underdogs. I think after that, it's just like smooth sailing for most of the rest of the season. The other 2 games that they're underdogs in, 2-point dogs, 2.5 point dogs in week 14 and 17. Like it's nothing that they can't possibly overcome. It's kind of just like a coin flip game. So I don't know. I think we've talked about Jets to win the division. Jets win total, I think, is interesting at 9.5. Like they're just, I mean, their roster is great. Like if Rodgers can just not tear his Achilles on the first damn play of the game, I mean, like season, like they could easily win 11, 12 games and flirt with winning the division here, especially if they win a couple like in division games. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how to play it, but it's definitely on my radar of finding ways to play. Maybe some Jets alts overs, maybe it's win total, because I think the upside here is just massive and the schedule is so easy.
And again, the end of the season that matters. Those 2 tough division games against Buffalo and Miami in 17 and 18. They're both at home, so a nice little break for them in terms of where those games have popped up for them too. So nice spot for them. Getting Miami at home in week 18. That's a warm weather team coming to New York there in early January. So yeah, tough one. Ravens, tough start to the schedule as well. Open at Kansas City, host the Raiders in week 2, but then Cowboys, Bills, Bengals to get started there. That is tough. Now it softens up quite a bit, but interesting to see how the Ravens kind of shape up with, lots of turnover, defensive turnover, bringing in Derrick Henry on the offensive side, losing, your defensive coordinator. So some interesting stuff there with the Ravens. I'm going to continue to be on the Bengals. The more I look at that division, the more I look at that team, I really like what's going on with the Bengals. I like their schedule compared to the rest of their opponents. Again, we touched on this too. You look at the hardest schedules. Ravens 29th, so 4th hardest schedule. Browns 30th, 3rd hardest schedule. Steelers the toughest schedule in the league. Bengals 6th easiest schedule. So all of their divisional foes have a top 5 more difficult schedule. The unique 3 for Cincinnati is New England, Carolina, and Tennessee. Like look at the Ravens: Buffalo, Houston, Tampa Bay. The Steelers have the Jets, the Colts, and the Falcons. So like New England, Tennessee, Carolina is a huge edge for the Bengals. So again, they've been off to a slow start. Obviously, we're having to work another year coming off of an injury for Joe Burrow. Plus 170 to win the division. Win total's kind of juiced up. I'd probably prefer to play division on the Bengals. I think it's a tough division. I just think that's the best team there, and they also have the softest path. So want to find ways to fade the Ravens. I just kind of find myself in the spot every year. I'm kind of a Ravens hater, but I don't mean to take up as a Ravens hater. But I think the slow start for the Ravens makes that number early in the season for the Bengals make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think you could almost play this in an interesting way. So the Bengals in the first 9 weeks of the season are underdogs just once, and it's 4-point dogs. And they're 8-point favorites, 7-point favorites, 5, 7 again, and then there's some closer games in there as well. But I would expect a hot start from the Bengals. On the flip side, the Ravens, you already mentioned, the first 5 games, they're underdogs in 3 of them. And so, I mean, again, like we're just projecting out 2-3 start, 3-2, somewhere in that range. You could probably, if you buy the Bengals early and then buy in on the Ravens to win the division as well, I think that's very much live because the odds there are going to be inflated. The Ravens after week 5 are not underdogs in a single game. They are favored in every single game after that. So I think that's kind of the ebbs and flows of these schedules here are worth noting because there's certain buying opportunities on teams that I think we can not easily project, but at least more easily visualize throughout the season.
Yep, it's a good point. Definitely ways to, these are notes to make. And obviously things ebb and flow and, there's injuries and all these different things can happen. And, where we project these teams to be versus how good they end up being ends up changing, obviously. I mean, great example last year is I know I thought pretty poorly of the Rams and the Buccaneers, and those 2 teams made the playoffs and won playoff games. So like these things definitely have an ebb and flow to them. But obviously you want to find, based off of what we know now, these are markets that shape these things. We can bet into these markets if we think they're wrong. But as currently stands, this is what we know about these teams. And it looks a little bit softer and lighter for them too. Who else you want to highlight?
Yeah, I have 2 more notes. We got to talk about the Broncos. The Broncos win total is at 6 flat on Caesars still. I mean, they're favored in 2 games. And I just don't get it. Like, I feel like this win total is probably too high. I mean, the defense is fine. The offense is also fine. If you project even average quarterback play, there's a good chance that they're not getting even average quarterback play. I don't know. It just seems like something that the schedule is not lined up for them. I mean, there's a lot of games that, 4.5, 3, 3.5, 6, like all those underdogs in all those games. But then there's, they're 10, 9, 7.5 point underdogs in plenty of games as well throughout the season. Like there's not many games on their schedule that you're like, oh, that's winnable. And the games that they are favored in, 1 points, 2.5. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's 2 games. It's just 2 games all season that they're favored. So I don't know. Getting to 7 wins for this team would require either the defense greatly outperforming, like Patrick Surtain winning Defensive Player of the Year, which is possible, or Bo Nix just being, Drew Brees as a rookie, which I don't really see happening.
And the thing you like to see for the Broncos is to have that edge early in the season with those September games at home, because that has historically been a pretty nice edge for them early in the season. And they play 3 of the first 4 on the road. So they don't even really have, they just get the Steelers in week 2 where they host them. So most of that stuff is coming and they'll have to do most of that work early with a rookie quarterback who I feel like they probably throw to the wolves, right? I mean, this is even the reports coming out like how he wowed them in their first rookie camp and looking like we're going to see Bo Nix with the ball under center in week 1. So it'd be an interesting one too. Cardinals are interesting. They have there's some like Cardinals love, I think, early in the season. The start of the season is really, really tough. I mean, playoff teams to start with 5 of the first 6. Buffalo, the Rams, the Lions. Then they get the Commanders at home. Then on the road back-to-back weeks in San Francisco, in Green Bay. That is a tough, and it doesn't get softer. Really, the Chargers, the Dolphins, Bears, Jets heading into the week 10 bye, the toughest schedule in the league through the first 10 weeks of the season. Now, softer coming out of the bye, but at that point, the damage might be done. Now, I think the offense could be more interesting if you get Kyler playing towards his ceiling, obviously with Marvin Harrison Jr. there, some upgrades. Defense, I think Jonathan Gagnon did a good job coaching that unit up last year. I think it probably has some success doing it again this year. Still one of the worst units in the league. The secondary is poor. And they're playing some teams that can chuck it around here. I still think, Cardinals games, if they're interesting, are going to be overs. So maybe that's the way to play it. If we're bullish on the Cardinals whatsoever, because I still think the defense is going to be able to give up points in bunches.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Like maybe their schedule lightens up a little bit after the bye, but they're still only favored in half their games. It's like 1 point, 3 points, 1 point. I mean, it's like literally Yeah, I mean, it's not great. Like they're not favored in a single game this season by more than 3 points. And they're underdogs in the way, like the heavy majority of them. So I don't know. It's just going to be tough for, I think, the Cardinals to pull out like an awesome season. That being said, like I think Gannon and crew, greatly overperformed last year, given what they had. Like, I mean, they just had a terrible, terrible roster last year. Still found a way to win some games. Kind of just played some ugly football. So I don't know. I think they're an interesting team, and you probably have the right angle there with the overs being the look.
Yeah, it probably just is a team that's, that can score some points there too. You said you have one more note. What else do you want to share?
Yeah, the Niners are favored in every game. The Chiefs are favored in all but 2 games, which is interesting because I don't really think the Chiefs got better. I mean, I think they're fine. Like, I mean, they're obviously a really good team because they have Patrick Mahomes, but like their surrounding pieces, I don't really think got much better, if anything. With Rashee Rice potentially suspended, I would expect like half the season at this point. What are you thinking? I feel like
6 to 8, right? Probably. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting here. I'm not necessarily looking to bet against the Chiefs, but they're favored in every single game leading up to their bye in week 6. And then another team that is favored as Robo 35 here in the chat said Lions schedule is set up easy. I believe it's not super easy, but they are favored in all their games leading up to their week 5 bye. I think the addition of the Bears kind of getting better. And the Vikings are going to be, I don't know, I wouldn't say good, but like kind of frisky, I would say, from game to game, especially if they get anything out of JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold. My expectations for Darnold are pretty low, but I think JJ is a little bit more volatile, so I just don't really know what to expect with him.
Yeah, I mean, look, so all of the NFC North teams play the NFC West, which is outside of the Niners. I think all winnable games for everyone else in that division. And then the AFC South. So, a decent division, all kind of middling teams. I think I think the Texans are a little bit better than that. I think there's some playoff teams in there, but not like a super hard division to pull. But then the Lions, when you look again, you have to do this in comparison to their opponents in the division, whereas they play a random team in the NFC East. I'm sorry, the AFC East, in the NFC East. The Lions play the Bills. The Bears play the Patriots. So that's an advantage for the Patriots. The Lions in the AFC, the NFC South, the Lions play the Bucks. The Bears play the Panthers. It's a little bit easier. The Lions play at Dallas, and the Bears play at Washington. So, yeah, the Lions are okay, but they're not playing anyone that like the rest of their opponents in the division don't have on their schedule as well. And then when you kind of look at the big 3 that they play, it's a little bit harder than everyone else. So they're a great football team. They have a fantastic roster. There just aren't many holes on the roster. So the Lions are going to be good, but not because they have an easy schedule.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think this year, something that I've noticed with doing the whole, like, what games are favored in with look ahead lines, this year's like specifically, it's a lot of like the haves and have nots. So the Lions are only underdogs of 4 games. But again, you have 2 teams that are not favored in a single game. And then you have the Broncos who are favored in like 2 games. Like, whereas last year, I think there was one team that was favored in 0 games, and then like maybe one that was like 2 or 3. Like it's like way more skewed to the outliers here, which I don't know, I guess is interesting because I think it's created. I mean, some teams who have inflated totals with this kind of stuff, maybe Detroit, and then vice versa, like New England. But I mean, again, like New England, like they're going to win a couple of games. It's just like on paper right now, it's very tough to see what those games are right now.
Yeah, I don't know where they're coming from. Yeah, all right, man. That's all I got. So you got anything else for the people?
No, I think that's basically it. I mean, it's
looking forward to the threads.
Great.
I love the thread content. This is compiling and just getting a sense of where they are in the marketplace. Again, like I think there's an edge to be had with kind of looking at the Pats aren't favored in any games. Why is their win total 5.5? Like here's like these things obviously change. They have to still play the game, but like there's information to be gleaned from the tweets and content Connor will have here over the next week or so.
For sure. Yeah. It should be fun. And then, if there's any questions, feel free to slide into the DMs and we'll probably talk about it more in the shows to come.
Perfect. Subscribe before you leave. If you're watching on YouTube, the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel, we appreciate that. We'll continue to have content here every week leading up to the season. As we get into the off-season stuff, football does not rest. Podcast form wherever you listen to podcasts as well. We appreciate it. Head over to 4for4.com/plans, scoop up the betting sub, get all of the written content that we have going on, get in the Discord, get all the official plays and bets. By the time we talk about them on the show, they're probably already played, and our subscribers will play them as well. And you will not get the best of the number. So get the best of the number, get in the Discord, join 4for4.com/plans. So for Connor, I'm Ryan. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everyone.